We'll now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start with the FARIA. You've indicated that we have considerable monies that are recovered pursuant to this statute. And for edification purposes, that's the Financial Institutions Reform, Recovery, and Enforcement Act. And you make a recommendation with reference to these recoveries. First, give us some indication as to how you have used this to make the recoveries, and then, if you would, I'd like for you to address the recommendation.
Well, with regard to our civil oversight, using a number of different laws, the False Claims Act, FIREA, to recover loans from these larger institutions, we are making headway in recoveries. We have done that previously on a number of cases, the largest for us being a settlement with Bank of America to the tune of about $1 billion, some of that coming back to the FHA's mortgage fund. We have others that are in the pipeline and negotiations that we're still looking at. They have not been settled. With regard to our servicing national settlement that we had a year and a half ago, the $25 billion, some of those funds came back to FHA's mutual mortgage fund to help offset its losses. So I think these are certainly strong laws for us to use. DOJ, though, makes a decision on which one to proceed. When we're working our matters as fact finders, we will coordinate with the Department of Justice, and working with them, we will make a decision whether a False Claims Act charge would be more appropriate than FIREA, or what other charge might be. So really it's up to DOJ not only to do that, but to negotiate what type of settlement would come out of these in conjunction with HUD is a partner in that.
Your recommendation is really what I want to get to. You've indicated that the funds, when you recover them, will go to the Treasury, and you have an alternative recommendation.
Yes, sir. Well, my recommendation would be that more of these funds come back to the program that was impacted. In this case, it would be the MMI fund of FHA.
And if you would, just go into the rationale for this, please. Why would you want the funds to come back to the program as opposed to Treasury?
Well, on most civil settlements, the whole idea is you're trying to make the entity that suffered the loss whole. And to the extent that FHA's fund has suffered in the billions, you know, my feeling as an overseer would be that some of those funds should come back to make that program whole. It is the one who suffered the losses. By making it whole through these settlements, it avoids them having to go to the Treasury to make an appropriations draw sometime later this year. So it has actually a benefit to the taxpayer for FHA to be able to do that. And those are issues that we are in discussion with DOJ when it comes to settlement agreements and where that money should go.
Now, one more thing. You have tried to put things in a proper perspective with reference to the fraud that you have called to our attention. And you've used the term, you can expect to see some fraud. In terms of trying to put things in perspective, in all of the programs that we find that are huge, let's take the Department of Defense. We find that we have some fraud in the Department of Defense when properly audited. Is this a fair statement?
Yes, sir, and I'd like to add to that, it's not only just fraud, it's mismanagement.
Do you find some mismanagement when we audit the Department of Defense?
I would imagine.
You don't do it
Defense
personally.
or HUD? Are you referring to?
No, I'm speaking now of other programs, because you were trying to put it in perspective when you said you're going to see some fraud.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is give you an opportunity to do this, because there are other programs, when you put them in perspective, they too have fraud, but it's your job to root out and find this fraud, call it to our attention so that we can eliminate it.
Absolutely, sir, and that is the role of all inspectors general.
So with reference to your statement, we should expect to see some fraud. Just elaborate briefly, please, because I think that it helps us to better understand that while we have some problems that we have to deal with, that HUD is not at the point of about to crash, and that these are not insurmountable problems.
Right. Well, no, sir. The HUD is certainly not about to crash. And what I would say is, yes, in all of these government agencies and programs, there's about 78 inspectors general. And in our discussions, we all virtually see the same thing. There is an amount of fraud, there is an amount of mismanagement, waste, abuse. all these things could have a financial impact on the agencies that we all oversee. HUD is no different than anyone else. It's just the nuances on where those mismanagements, frauds, and abuses occur.
And finally, in the private sector, you also have fraud, and it's uncovered, and hopefully we take appropriate action when we find it. Your point is that it happens, we want to eliminate it, and that your office is doing a good job. Is that a fair statement? And I assume you would agree that you're doing a good job.
I would agree with the entire statement, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.